I invited 3 experienced home education moms to join me in the Homeschool Lounge. They themselves enjoy reading. They encourage their children to read, and between them, they have a good understanding of the challenges children face when learning to read. My guests are Marinda Erwee, Chantal Malan, and Karen Badenhorst, and we are discussing the importance of reading. Marinda, why do you enjoy reading?
And now my love for reading began when I was about 10 years old. My dad took me to the library, and being an only child, and that was a very long time ago, by the way. Being an only child, we didn't have TV and all the modern amenities that children have these days. So I used to get lost in books because it was a world that opened up to me, and I was a very imaginative child from a young age. I used to go and play in the garden and imagine there were little fairies and all that kind of thing. So I was really like a very imaginative child, and to get lost in those stories and books that describe places I had never seen or known was really just absolutely wonderful. And that's where it began for me, and I've always hoped to foster that to my children too.
Yes, I remember reading as a child as well. It was an escape, because at school you have all the pressure with extracurricular activities, and then I go in my room and you get lost in this world, and it's like you're not even in the room anymore. Yes.
No, it's like surrounding you with inspiring people, interesting things that you don't know about, so you can enrich yourself so much.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely read to escape.
Yeah, and when we were children, we didn't have the distractions of TV and WhatsApps. We relied heavily just on books.
Yeah.
And that impacted us a lot to be much more creative, and even in our writing later on.
Yes.
I remember that a lot of my stories and my classmates' stories won prizes, and I think it was because we just had such a love for learning, and it just advanced our vocabulary and our knowledge on so many levels, and even your spelling, incidentally. So it's not this drill and kill scenario, it's just this beautiful blossoming.
Yeah, Marinda, you touched on something that I want to ask next, and it is that we all have those memories of books and stories that our children liked, the ones that you had to read over and over and over, and they could recite it to you after a while. So what are the benefits? You touched on it just now, but what are the benefits of reading to your children? Why should parents read to their children?
Well, you know what, I feel, anybody, sorry. I personally feel that it is such a special time with your children, bonding with them. It's a time where you're sitting and making them feel special and engaging with them in something that they love. And like you say, reading over and over. My little ones love The Enormous Crocodile. So we read that over and over and over again. And the best part was, of course, when he got shot off into space and got sizzled like a sausage. So definitely for me, one of the most important things is that time that you're spending with your child. And the benefits are just so many. Besides the obvious ones of building vocabulary, learning to read incidentally, building comprehension skills, and all those wonderful things that just naturally evolve from that.
A wonderful thing to me is that all the people that interact with my children say, "You're so interesting, you have so much to talk about." And it's all fruit of the reading we do. It gives them lots of things to talk and write about.
Yeah, you can travel the world without leaving your room.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, what Karen, exactly, it's a general knowledge of various subjects. So, and that's also nice, because if you give them, read to them, and then they pick up on what's interesting to them, then they can follow that interest. Whereas if you didn't expose them to it, they would never know that there's ancient Egypt or the Roman Empire or hydraulics, just things my son is interested in because he was exposed to it from young age. And then you can also weed out the things that they definitely don't like.
Yeah, Karen, I want to ask, many parents stop reading to their children once they can read themselves. Is this necessarily a good thing, or should a parent continue to read aloud?
Yes, they must please continue to read to the child, because you can read books to your child above the child's competency level, and you can enrich their mind. And the other thing is, when a family reads together, they are on the same page, they enjoy the same jokes, the same vocabulary, and it builds a very strong bond. If you stop reading, you break that connection. So I encourage parents to please keep on reading. My children are 22, 20, and 17, and we still read together every day.
Yes.
I see lots of heads nodding. So
yes.
Yeah, I also find, especially books like historic novels, where you are put in a situation that you would never experience yourself, to then be able to discuss that with my son and to say, but why did the character react this way, or why was this situation forced upon them? It just allows for so many opportunities to talk about life and to prepare you for new experiences. I read that the cognitive psychologist Keith Oatley, he's a Canadian, said that fiction is the mind's flight simulator. And I think you all agree with that. It's you get a bit of a test run. I don't know if maybe Marinda or Karen, you know, why is that so? What happens in the brain? Why?
Marinda?
Well, you know, there's so many factors that can influence a child's ability to read. And basically, so the senses, the brain, and the muscles all work together. So a child, well, and the mouth. So the mouth would be the muscle if they're reading. But also what can impact on reading is the maturation of the eye on a physical level. So some children might feel that they're not, you know, they don't enjoy reading, or they move away from it, or they don't like reading. In fact, my 12-year-old, he had a very negative feeling towards reading, and I actually said to him the one day, but it wasn't that he was battling to read. So the eye takes between 8 to 10 years to mature enough to work to actually read on a two-dimensional plane. So what happened with him is he just needed that little bit of maturation. But what he didn't realize was that he actually, in fact, did love reading. He just hadn't connected with a fiction novels that interested him enough to engage him to read independently, or to encourage him to read independently. But he would always sit, we have that I wonder why range. And he would always sit and he would come and tell me snippets of things that he'd read. And then I said to him, and the one day he came up again with, oh, I don't like reading. And I said to him, but when you come, and how did you find out about all this information that you're telling me? He says, well, I read it in the I Wonder Why book. So I said, so then you are reading. And then like he had an aha moment, and he went, oh, actually, I do love reading. And we had a breakthrough from that moment. So all those things impact. And it's just like, it's also, when he turned 9, it was as if something magical happened. Everything that he felt he couldn't, he suddenly could. He'd had, our homeschool journey, he'd had a bit of a negative experience, and that's how our homeschool journey started. So unfortunately, it was all that negativity that we had to work through as a family in a happy way. So there's a lot of things that impact on a child's ability to read, but I actually think that that's more a discussion for another day because it can take a very long time, and it's also a very interesting topic. Yes, so that's just sharing from our side.
Yeah. The most important thing to me is if you enrich the imagination, the children start to do fantasy play. And that's the that you're looking for. You want them, encourage them to do fantasy play. And when they do that, they it feeds their creativity, and the creativity comes alive, and it supports their problem-solving skills, and it builds their emotional intelligence very strong. And that's what you want that fantasy to take off like an airplane, that what you told about. Oh no.
Yes.
Yeah,
Very
Chantal,
true.
I think you can add to this now, because your son has some reading struggles, but yet he loves his magazines and his books and stories. So how did you foster that love of learning and love of reading?
Yes, when it became clear that he had reading struggles, we went to all the therapists and specialists, remedial programs, to the eye doctor, the ear doctor. We wanted to make sure we could help where we could. But unfortunately, it didn't give him the benefit that I hoped it would give him. And instead of loving reading, he started getting an aversion to it, because it felt like we were forcing him to read. And then he started getting very unhappy, very frustrated. And then I thought, well, instead of focusing on learning to read, why don't I just focus on learning? So I told him, we're not going to do formal reading, we're going to do incidental reading, and we are going to use all the technology available to help him. So speech to text, text to speech, we're going to do audiobooks, educational channels, and I'll continue reading to him and making up stories like I did from little. And once we did that, I thought, now I'm just focusing on feeding the imagination and fueling the curiosity, like you two said as well. And I found that when he just relaxed and enjoyed the process, he naturally gravitated back towards the books and back towards learning. In fact, he has an insatiable curiosity and extreme enthusiasm for learning. And I realized that in my journey with him, it was such a 180 for me, because like you girls, I love to read. And I just thought, well, it's like a bird, you flap your wings and you fly. But having a little hatchling that couldn't, I'm so grateful that these days we have access to help. So reading is one gateway to learning, but not the only one, not for neurodiverse children.
Yeah, it's a very complex skill to accomplish for the brain, is reading. We had our own struggles with my son. He has dyslexia, and I'm a remedial therapist. And I thought, well, all the exercises and thick books to work through with him, and I tried everything that I've studied about, and it didn't work. And our relationship was so strained, and he was very, very unhappy. And then I decided I'm not going to label him. I know he has dyslexia, and I just chilled. I was one of those ancient parents calling Leonard van Oostrom and tell him, my son is not reading, he's 9 already. And he said, well, start praying for a wife that can read. And I didn't like that answer at all. I wanted help with reading programs and what. And so he said, just wait, he will come to it later on. And so I just stimulated him and read about his interests. And I had to wait until he was 14 before he actually started to read independently. So yes, sometimes you have to have hair on your teeth and stuck in and staying there. It's coming.
Yeah, and like you say, and the reason why I dropped it was because of the strain in our relationship. I was wanting one outcome and he couldn't give it. And I just had to drop, release, and follow his interest, follow his lead. And that changed everything in that moment, because he grew. Now he could trust me because he could see I have his back. And so now as you say, we're all reading. He's turning 17, and my husband and I, we read, the three of us read together. I would read something that I find interesting. We'd watch documentaries together, which would spark the imagination. Pause the documentary in the middle of it, and then if it's something to do with engineering, they can discuss it. If it's something to do with history, we can discuss it. So yes, like I said, I'm so grateful that I can homeschool in this country. It's still legal, and that we can actually grow together and learn together.
I'd like to add to that. You know, you both said something very valuable. It's almost as, you know, a child can only learn to their potential when the environment is relaxed. So
yes.
as soon as us as moms sometimes take a step back and we sort of relax and try and see things from a different perspective, and also sometimes let them lead. Because I found with my little ones as well, if I let them lead, the interest is there, and then you can build on that. As soon as you introduce stress, that's often when the blockages happen and they just cannot progress to like reach those goals that we sort of envision that you were speaking about. But that's literally how we learn. So you learn best if you're in a relaxed environment. And I think sometimes as moms as well, especially new moms trying to teach their younger children to read, I think people like panic because they want to tick boxes. And I think sometimes if we just as moms do exactly what you moms said, you've walked the long road as well, all of us have in some form, just take that step back and evaluate and sort of almost let them lead in their interests in what that's when they blossom, and that's when you actually have the breakthroughs.
I think,
and we as parents, sorry, I just want to say that we must protect our children's vulnerability, because they feel very vulnerable when they cannot do that. And with my son, he had two sisters who didn't have a reading problem, and now he has one. So so we had to protect him in that area.
I think I already know the answer to my next question. Sorry, Chantal. But I recently made a very controversial statement where I said that a child's proficiency in reading should not be used as a measure of intelligence or to determine whether learning has happened. And it seems that you agree. So do you want to add to that maybe?
Yes, definitely. I don't understand why it is a controversial statement. I mean, if we have people like Albert Einstein and famously smart and dyslexic and successful, and Richard Branson and Winston Churchill and Steve Jobs, the list just goes on and on about successful dyslexic people. And some firms in the world actually prefer dyslexic employees in certain areas. For example, in architecture, because of the unique 3D abilities they have. And if I can read this, which I found so interesting, Chris Arnold, who founded the marketing consulting company, The Garage, said, dyslexia isn't a disability, it's an inability in a linear world, but a great ability in a creative one. Dyslexics are great at creativity, imagination, strategic thinking, and problem solving. And I found that definitely when my son was about 6, 7, things that woke me up to the fact that perhaps I need to change the way I look at him was he was struggling to spell the word pop. He just stayed in the distance and he didn't respond. And I said, now, if you're not thinking about spelling pop, what are you thinking about? So he said, well, I'm contemplating the corrosive properties of stomach acids. So I was like, okay. And he was even younger than that. And he was in his car seat. And, you know, you entertain your toddler in the car seat. And I was pointing out some grazing cows. And he said, well, that's standard bovine behavior. And then I realized I was doing him a disservice to ask him to spell pop, mom and dad, while he's already thinking about other bigger things and had a very good vocabulary because I was reading to him so often as a child. And then I realized what I was doing is reading is this big roadblock, and we're bumping the car against the roadblock instead of taking the detours that modern day technology have given us. And in taking the detour, he could explore the world and connect to his inner and outer worlds without any stress. But what needed was I needed to have the confidence to take the detour, not to follow the voices that tell you, ooh, he should be reading, ooh, why is he behind? It should really be, trust my child, trust this is the right path, and then check in. Yes, he's fine. And now that he's exploring the inner worlds and outer worlds, and he follows his own interests, we don't have to focus on the fact that he doesn't read fluently. And then you realize that is not, it's not so necessary if he has the imagination and the drive and the curiosity. And Karen said exactly that. The fantasy that leads to the curiosity, that leads to the problem solving. I see that. We just skip the reading, but we fed the fantasy with all the stories and all the other technology and help. And now he tells people, well, I'm dyslexic. Can you help me read, please? And because he's so confident and it's not an issue to him, people read to him. Oh, yes, of course. And which I feel might not have happened in mainstream school, where he would have a certain stigma to, oh, he's slow or he can't read. And to your point, the dyslexia or reading struggles doesn't at all reflect on your ability to comprehend and learn.
That also just ties in, if I may add, to the fact that children will learn a skill that they need when they need it. And I think exactly. that is really a very important lesson to remember in all of this. And like you said, Chantal, it isn't necessarily that they might read, but they will acquire that knowledge in the way. My husband doesn't actually really love reading a lot, but he acquires all the knowledge that he does, like you say, through modern technology and research. So the world is literally your oyster, and you will use what you need when you need it.
Now, I just want to say, Charlotte Mason said, a person is not built up from without, but from within. And we as parents like to bring the books and all the materials from outside to build our kids, but it's the inside that's the most important. And it's also important, I always tell them, it's the important part is what you can do with what you know. You can do something with what you know. You can do anything in life. And we have friends. A friend of mine is a chef, and her husband is dyslexic, but he is fantastic with people. So he invites you at the restaurant door, and he can tell you exactly what's on the menu for the night. He remembers it. The personnel tells him tonight it's this and this and that. And he invites you at the door, tells you exactly what you can order tonight. He makes you feel welcome, make you sit down. And well, reading is not a problem to him. And their restaurant is such a success because of him.
Yes, that is lovely. Exactly that you have to apply your knowledge. And if you can apply it, then you can do anything. I was thinking, I didn't learn photography at school or university. I learned that as a hobby. But because it was my interest, I just read up about it. You know, so it's true for children as well. You don't need to go to a tertiary education if you or follow a mainstream way to get where you need to be.
That is so. Sorry, Chantal.
No, what I want to say, what helped me with my son was definitely the fact that I read to him so much. So even though he struggles with reading, the fact that I could just open up worlds for him because I read, and now even if he has children, at least he would have access to stories, and by then hopefully be able to read as well as he would love to be to read.
Yeah, no, those are truly words of encouragement. As quickly as to end off, what are you currently reading, Marinda?
Well, my youngest one is very into the Diary of a Wimpy. Oh, what am I currently reading, or what is she reading?
Either way.
Any of them. Oh no, they into the Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and then that spilled over actually into Life of Fred Maths, because they just loved the stories so much, and they love maths anyhow, but they loved the stories that went with it. And we have such fun just actually reading together every day, and then whatever theme we want to explore as well. So we've really just we always just have books around our house, to be quite honest, and around our little studio which we call our learning space. There's a bed in there, there's couches. Nobody ever sits and reads in here. It's very relaxed, yeah. And so they've got so many reading materials. My daughter, she actually taught herself to read at 3.5. So Corin, I know where you're coming from when you said that your daughters could read, and then your son, to encourage him in that area. But yeah, she's literally got a book in every room, and wherever she ends up, that's the book she's reading.
We are busy. Yeah, we are busy. We have a love for history, so we are busy with the history of ancient Rome, doing that. And my son is working at our neighbor's feedlot at weekends, and they farm there with goats. So I read to him a thick book about goats and all these sicknesses and habits and what. So that, because that's above his reading competency, so I read that to him. And now we read also The Richest Man in Babylon for financial tips and skills. So we read that, I think, for the 3rd time. And I think that's basically what we're reading now.
Chantal?
You girls, when you talk, then I want to read what you're reading. I get so excited. It all sounds so interesting. At the moment, with Emil as well. We have one book we're reading, The Wizards of Wands. It's the 4th book in a series of Cressida Kell. Very nice series. But as well, if there's a magazine with a story or whatever, we read it. I'm reading Stephen King's Dark Tower series, The Gunslinger, but I'm also reading Peter Hamilton's Judas Unchained. This is a 3rd in a space opera series, and this is the 1st of the Dark Tower series. So I'm very interested in science fiction and space operas, and but also all of us love history, especially ancient histories.
Yeah, it's strangely enough, one thing I only learned once I started reading to my son was that you could read more than one book at a time. I was convinced I can only pay attention to one book, and now I also have 3 or 4 going at the same time, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's very good for the brains. We usually read 3 books. When they were younger, I read 3 times a day, and each time a different book. And they keep track of the stories. The morning it's this story, and tonight it's the other one. And they have to keep up with the stories and different plots and different things, and they do it. And I always did one Afrikaans reading because that's our first language, and one English reading. So I don't read the scary stories at night, the more nice and stories at evening for a good night rest, and the morning we like the action and all kinds of interesting stuff. Yes.
Well, ladies, thank you.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I just want to say, my son does, apart from reading this, my son does books, obviously, because that's easier for him, and he's at the moment doing Lord of the Rings. So, but no. I don't know if it's a good idea. Now that you talk, Karen, I don't think it's a good idea that he does it at night.
Yeah.
Thanks for the tip.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for this lovely conversation. And as Marinda said, we'll need to have a second one where we talk about the mechanics of reading and specific advice and assistance. And I think we're all rushing off to bed to grab our books.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much, and nice talking to you all. It was lovely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, it's great. I just want to add, I've been doing a gardening journal and reading a whole lot of books on gardening because that's now my new interest. But I'm sorry to say I'm on my own. Nobody else in the family are interested.